This is Reatha Carney, who is our narrator, and I'm Connie Rufner. I am the interviewer. So, Reatha, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
And so what year were you born?
1932, October 4th.
Okay, so you, during the Depression, you were a little girl.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was.
How much, do you remember much about it?
I remember a lot of things, but not a lot.
But just bits and
Right.
pieces?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you were telling me about the stamps that you got that were ration stamps?
Mm-hmm.
And it was for food and for other things.
Yeah, and shoes and things like that. And we were allowed one stamp a year for a pair of shoes, and one stamp a month for 5 pounds of flour and 5 pounds of sugar. And that's all I remember about that.
How many kids were in your family?
The kids, there was 5 of us,
So
5 girls.
family of 7 and 5 pounds of flour and 5 pounds of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And where did the rest of your food come from?
The farm.
So you lived on a farm?
I lived on a 200-acre farm, and we raised everything. Cows, pigs, chickens, anything you'd want, we had them. And didn't have to worry about food like that to eat. My granddad had acres of potatoes, and also my mother had 8 brothers and sisters, and they all had a home on the farm, and they all worked at the farm, so they didn't have to worry about a lot of food.
So it was originally, the farm was in your mother's family?
My mother's grandparents and my grandparents inherited it. So it's been there a lot of years.
And you said you're still living there?
Mm-hmm. I have 6 acres of the original 200-acre farm.
And your sisters too?
All but one sister. The other 3 also live, and we're all together. We can see each other's farm building from each other's house.
So how long did a pair of shoes last?
A good while, because we always ran in our bare feet. We never wore shoes. So
as long as it was warm enough.
Right. Well, me, even in the wintertime in the snow, I would be out in my bare feet.
Would you really?
Mm-hmm.
And your feet didn't freeze?
Oh. And well, to this day, if I could run outside, I'd be in my bare feet.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And our dresses were always handmade out of feed sacks, and that's just the way we lived.
I've seen in the pictures you have that the dresses were pretty.
Oh yeah, my mother made them, and my grandmother, or flour sacks and things like that. When they bought the food for the animals, they came in sacks that had prints, and we used that for to make the dresses and things.
So when you were little, you went to a one-room school.
Right, Smeltzer School on Smeltzer Flat.
And you walked?
And we walked.
How far was it, do you think?
It was probably a good half mile, something like that. I don't know that it was ever measured. And I never rode a school bus till I came down to Ford City in senior year, or freshman year. And no one else from the farm was on a school bus until the year before that.
How many grades were in your school? How many grades in your school, in your elementary school? Yeah,
8 grades.
8 grades.
Mm-hmm.
And how many kids were in the school?
I never counted them. The first year I can remember, there was probably maybe, I'll guess, 2 dozen,
Uh-huh.
something like that. Then each year it developed bigger.
So what did you, how did they do that? I mean, if they had 8 grades there, how many teachers were there?
1. And
Yeah.
the teacher I remember was Mrs. Bryan from Pattonville.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I live in Pattonville now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, uh-huh. So how did they do that? I mean, how did they teach 8 different grades?
She'd teach one at a time, and the rest of us sat there and did whatever we wanted to do
Oh,
while she was
really?
teaching the other class.
So did you just draw or talk or?
Mm-hmm. We didn't do too much talking.
Yeah.
We had to keep quiet.
So you could do, did you have like a lot of homework to do?
Yes, we had a good bit.
And did you mostly do it at school?
Mm-hmm. Took very little home.
Yeah. So how long do you think she spent on each class every day then?
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. Did she teach one class for a while and then the whole rest of the day they were doing something else?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we stayed the whole day. Then we'd have a recess every so often. And I don't remember how long that was. Maybe 15 minutes that was.
And you
But
go
the whole-
outside?
We went outside. The whole school went at the same time.
What'd you do?
We played ball or any other thing that jumped rope and whatever we could think of to do.
And what must
Some
you...
of them had battles.
Yeah. So did you get to be good friends with most of the kids?
Oh yes, still am. Mm-hmm.
What months did you go to school then? I mean, was it, right now it's
We
like...
only went 6 months.
You only went 6 months.
Because we were allowed time off to farm.
So was it, what, October, November,
So
December?
we went in September.
Oh, you started in September.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like in March, the farm work would start when the thaw came. And that's when you would be off from then on.
We'd be off.
So what kind of things did you do on the farm?
Everything. When I was old enough, I'd have to get up 4 o'clock in the morning and bring the cows into the barn and help milk them and feed them and take them back out to the field in the summertime and pitch hay for them. And we'd I can't think of everything we did.
So you milked them.
Yeah, we'd milk them. We had 40 cows we milked every morning and every evening.
How many of you were doing the milking?
There was only 3 of the girls. The other 2 had nothing to do with the animals.
Oh, okay.
They just didn't like to do things like that.
So what did they do instead?
They do housework, and not me. I don't do housework very much.
So you'd rather go out and...
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
rather be out.
I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a lot of horses.
We didn't have a lot of horses, but there's mostly 5 or 6 around. But then we also had the work horses for the farm machinery to do the I'm going to say garden work, but it wasn't a garden. It was the
farm.
The farm work, yeah.
Yeah, there's a picture here of your, is it your uncle plowing?
My uncle.
With horses.
Mm-hmm. He's
Yeah.
right there. He's plowing.
I'm not sure how well that's going to record, but it'll be in the archives.
Okay.
And so those were the work horses, and the other 5 or 6 horses were for riding,
Just for
traveling?
riding and make sure the cows and everything was and the fence wasn't down, that they'd get out and things like that.
Did you go into town on Saturdays? You never did.
Not until I was never in the town of Ford City till I went to high school. My dad used to take us to Katanning on Saturdays And we'd sit in the car and watch the people go up and down the street, but we weren't allowed to go shopping. So we had to sit in the car all the time.
So did you enjoy watching the people, or was it boring?
Yeah, I still do.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
So were there a lot of people in town on Saturday?
Quite a few, yeah. That's when everyone did their shopping.
Uh-huh.
And we weren't the only ones sitting in the car. A lot of the other kids weren't allowed to go into stores either. So that's the way it was.
So did you think of it as a treat to go into town?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So did you take, you took a car into town, though, so you had a car, too?
Well, first we went in the horse and buggy.
Uh-huh.
My granddad had a car.
Uh-huh.
And we went in his car. None of the other fellas had cars at that time.
For your granddad?
Mm-hmm. But granddad didn't drive. He had one of the boys take him any place he wanted to go.
I bet they were glad to do it.
Well, they had to. Granddad rolled the roost. So.
It's a whole different way of life.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. It sure is.
So you never did housework?
Oh, yeah, I did some, but only when I had to.
So you'd rather milk the cows?
Mm-hmm. Or work in the garden. I like to do that.
Do you still garden?
Not anymore. Melanie does my gardening now. I would help my grandmother butcher the chickens and things like that. I'd have to hold their head while she cut their head, hold their wings from flapping while she cut their heads off and things like that. And I love to help butcher the pigs. I like doing that.
So tell me how you kill a chicken and how you butcher a pig.
Well, like I said, she would hold their head, and I'd hold their feet and wings to keep them from flopping around. And she'd cut it off. Then she'd hang it on the clothesline for the blood to run out.
Did she cut it off with a hatchet or with a knife?
A hatchet.
With a hatchet.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you butcher a pig?
Shoot it and then put it in hot water and use something sharp to scrape the hair off, and then whatever else has to be done after that.
But that's the first thing you do, is put it in hot water and scrape off the hair.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the chickens, after the blood drains out, then how do you get the feathers off?
Put them in hot scalding water.
And then you just pull them out?
Pull them out.
So what'd you do with the feathers after?
Stuffed pillows and mattresses. Sometimes there was straw in the mattress.
So you used everything?
Mm-hmm. Nothing much went to waste. A lot more goes to waste now than back then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even then, when I was young, a lot more goes to waste.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you do hand-me-down clothes then?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Shoes and clothes and...
Because if you didn't wear out your shoes, then you must have.
Mm-hmm.
The next one in line got them.
Oh, yeah. Or the cousins got them. Everybody changed.
So where did you go to church then?
Hellman Lutheran Church.
Now where's that?
Up Garrett's Run Road.
Okay, was that very far from your farm?
Probably 2 miles, something like that.
Did you walk or did you take the buggy or how?
We went in a buggy, and then when my dad did get a car, he drove us.
Now how big was the church at that time?
Oh, it's a pretty good sized church. I can't tell you, just not a big church, but
Fair number of people?
yeah, I'd say there's quite a few. Mm-hmm.
Like maybe 100 or 200?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you still go there?
I don't go as often as I had to back then, but yeah, I go.
Did you go all day back then?
No, just Sunday school and church. Then we go to the things they had, dinners and things like that. But
So did you, in the summer, did the church have dinners outside?
yeah, they did. They still have things. I don't think as much as outside as they used to have, but they have quite a few things going on.
So when you were little, was that something you looked forward to, or was it boring?
I had to be forced to go a lot of times. It wasn't boring, I just didn't want to be inside. I still don't like to be inside a lot.
So you're still an outdoor person.
But I can't be out and do things like I used to be able to do. So things change.
Yeah. Was there something you wanted to ask?
No, I was just, she's covering it pretty good. I was just thinking that, like, the horse barn. You used to tell us about the horse
Oh,
barn.
yeah, I forgot about that. You'd have to go in there and tend to the horses. And then in the fall, they'd thrash the grain in the horse barn, and we'd have to work in all that mess. And fill the sacks with the grain and things like that, toss them around.
They used to bring them in by rail. From the,
My uncles did that.
yeah.
They'd bring them in from out west.
Oh.
And but I can't remember a lot of that. I can remember the last time they did it, but before that I would see them bring them, but I wasn't allowed around them because they were too wild.
So
They'd bring them in and they'd break them, and my granddad would sell them.
Oh. So they would bring wild horses in from out west, and your uncles would train them.
Yep.
And they just kept some of them for the family, or were they just passing through?
I don't remember them keeping any.
They didn't keep any of them. They just
I don't
trained them and
remember
sold them.
them keeping them anyway.
And so those are the horses you went out to the barn to take care of.
Yeah.
And you fed them
But
and cleaned out their stalls.
You didn't get close to them. You had to, like for the hay and feed, the barn was in 2 floors. And you'd have to, they had openings from the top to throw it down to the horses in the bottom.
Because they were too wild for you to get
yeah.
near them.
Yeah.
And then they did the threshing in the barn.
In the barn, yeah.
And that was your own, wheat?
Wheat and oats, barley and rye, all that.
Then what did you do with the grain?
We used it for the animals.
So you didn't
And
make flour out of it?
I was just going to say, my granddad would take some of it to get it ground, and they'd take some of the other grain to get chopped for the cows and the chickens.
So some of the flour you used was your own flour. I was wondering what you did for bread, if you could only get $5
Oh, we baked
flour.
a lot of bread.
Yeah.
I remember her telling me cooking for all the hands on the farm.
Yeah,
That was like one of her jobs.
Oh, so you cooked too? So
my granddad had workers that would live on the farm, and he would feed them, give them the feed that to use for what they needed.
So there were 8 families on the farm.
It was 10 altogether.
Of your family. Okay, so there were
With
8.
with my grandparents.
Okay.
My mother had 8 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there was
So there were 10 people from your family who
Yeah.
had households on the farm.
Right.
And their husbands and wives and their children. Wow. You grew up with a lot of people around.
yes, I did.
And then,
I had 30-some cousins altogether. And
Wow.
I don't know how many second cousins now. I didn't count. But it was a big family.
And so you fed the farm hens.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of them were there, do you know?
Well, I'm guessing at one time there'd be 4 or 5 there, depending on come threshing time, there'd be more come in, but they'd just come for the day to help.
So did you make them breakfast?
Oh, yeah. 3 meals.
Okay.
They got 3 meals a day.
So there were a lot of people around the table.
Yes.
So was it just you, or was it you and your sisters, or you and your mom, or
All of us worked with that.
together?
Yeah, we worked with that.
Yeah.
Did a lot of canning.
Yeah.
Hundreds of jars of cans we filled.
So what kind of things did you can?
Everything. Meat, vegetables, fruit. Whatever came along, we canned it.
What kind of fruit did you have at the farm?
Fruit was the apples, peaches, pears, plums. We had everything.
So you got peaches to grow up here?
Oh, yeah. I still grow some.
Do you really? And it's not too cold for them?
Sometimes it's too cold, but most of the time, the last couple of years, the blossoms froze too quick. But I just showed Melanie the other day a picture of a peach tree that had so many peaches on the limbs broke off.
Just yesterday.
My granddad had 2 different orchards with apples and peaches in. So we didn't buy any fruit either.
No. You must have some good recipes.
My daughter Janie made a cookbook with a lot of the old recipes in, with my mother's and grandmother's.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
And we use that cookbook more than we use any of the other ones.
Would you be willing to let us make a copy?
I don't know why she wouldn't.
She probably has another one out at her house. They made several copies of it, yeah. Published it.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I remember about you telling me about the you being the first people in the hall to have a phone and TV.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so do you remember when you got them?
Yes, I do. I was maybe 15 then when we got the first phone, and all the other families would come use the phone when they needed to call somebody. And my one uncle bought us kids a TV, and I think it had, if I remember right, 3 or 4 stations was all we could watch at the time. And we watched a lot of TV in the evenings before we went to bed.
What was your favorite show?
All the comics. They did that. That's about all they had back then. So
Was it a surprise, or did you know he was going to do it?
he told us he was going to do it.
Were you allowed to use the phone? The kids?
Oh, yeah.
Were you?
Well, I was the oldest one, so if we got a phone call and any of the other neighbors had a message, I'd have to go to the neighbor and tell them they had a message on the phone, and they had to come back up to the house and call whoever wanted to talk to them, and I did all the running around.
Well, Reatha, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
really enjoyed this.
I did too, come to think of it. Anita, I'm not even nervous.
You should have had your cheat sheet out.
Well, we covered everything,
Yeah,
I
pretty
think.
good.
You did great.
Did you talk about, was you someone a milkman?
Oh, yeah, my great-uncle Tom, he would, in his horse and buggy bring milk and butter and all that stuff down here to Ford City and sell it.
Oh.
Every day he'd come down with fresh milk.
And did he have a route where he took it to people regularly, or he just came into
He
town and
just
people
came in
ran out and
town
bought
and
it?
went wherever he thought people would want it. And then he did it soft, and everybody knew when he was coming, and they were waiting on him. I did forget about that.
I don't remember you ever telling me that one. That's interesting.
The old brain's not what it used to be.
That's wonderful. I just like have a whole, picture in my mind of a completely different way of life that people had here. And you're telling me about things that's how things were when I was born.
Yeah.
That's the way we had it. But there was never any squabbling with any of us. We knew what our job was, and we did it, and all the cousins got together, and I don't remember of any of us ever having a squabble.
Wow.
We were too busy.
Yeah, right. And then you were too tired.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the war ended?
Oh, yes.
How did you hear about it?
We were in town here in Ford City, I don't know what, and I don't know for sure.
You just remember you were in town.
Yeah.
And then was there a celebration?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of people. The town was full. Yep.
What did you do?
Sat in a car.
That's a great story. Oh, tell us about going to school at the Ford City High School. You'd been in this one-room school all along.
Yeah. It was very, very, very different. Very. You had to work at making a friend. They didn't know us, and we didn't know them, and it wasn't easy at first. But I did make a lot of friends.
How long did it take you, do you think, before you started making friends?
Oh. In the beginning, just a few at a time, but then you got to learn, as you went to the different classes and things, you got to meet more of them, and it really wasn't too hard afterwards, after we'd been there for a while. But it was different. The teachers, I think, was the hardest ones to get used to, because all I ever had before was just one teacher. And changing the classes from one room to the other wasn't easy. But we got through it.
So you said you weren't prepared in terms of what you knew for high school?
No. We weren't taught anything in that one-room school that compared to what down here. It was all so different.
Did you catch up eventually?
Eventually I did, yeah.
How long do you think it took?
Well, it depended on the class, which class was, some were easy and some were harder.
Which ones did you think were easier?
Can't remember.
Oh, okay.
I think English wasn't too bad. And then when I got up a little higher with the typing and shorthand, I just loved that. And things like that. But it really didn't take too long. The history and geography was the worst. I hated that.
So what did you do when you graduated from school then?
I worked for Jackson's Variety Store down here in Ford City for a while. But I did that on weekends before I graduated. And then back on the farm again.
Oh, so you went back to the farm?
Well, no, I meant I just
You
went back
married
to
young.
more farm work.
Uh-huh.
So,
She married real young, too.
yeah, I was only 19 when I got married.
And was your husband a farmer?
No.
What did he do?
He was when I met him, he was a bus driver. And then he went to, he was a construction worker and an iron worker. And the bus, any time he was laid off or anything from the iron work, he'd go back to bus driving. He drove bus for Ted Hallman, if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of traveling when he was an iron worker also. We would, well, one time I was working at Big River and I asked for 2 weeks off and they wouldn't give it to me, so I quit. And my husband and I and a cousin and her husband, the four of us would take our motorhome or our trailers and travel. And the guys would work construction work, and my cousin and I enjoyed ourselves.
Wow.
So then we went once for 6 weeks and once for 9 weeks.
Where did you go?
Oh, everywhere. Florida, the whole way down to Florida, across, and we ended up in Colorado and all around. Anywhere there was, the husbands would go to the union halls and get jobs, and wherever there was an opening, they'd go to work. New York, all around.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody think of anything else we want to ask?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now.
You did great, Rita.
Yeah.
Better than I thought I would, maybe.